Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster here, and welcome back to another Cards and Castles 2 video where, yes, I'm a bit late to these, kind of, but we're going to be talking about a couple of the recent balance changes that have been dropped in CNC2. Give you guys an update on where some of the cards stand and how things are a little bit shaken up because of it. But also, I do want to take a bit of a deeper discussion into the game as a whole afterwards. There's been a lot of changes and potentially more on the way in the, not just the year, but, potentially more within this month, maybe in the next few weeks. And so I want to kind of discuss, where CNC2 is at right now and just kind of give some insight as well as maybe predict the future, see what we could see, put up some of my own wish list changes perhaps, and maybe if you guys want to, you can leave some in the comments down below, get some discussion going. Just kind of seeing where that goes, because obviously CNC2 is in a bit of a weird phase right now. It's an early access, it's not a finished game, so it is still in some growing pains for sure. And I think that's maybe where people are sort of turned away from it. There's a lot of things going on in the game, I know, and some people just aren't willing to put that energy into learning the game. They kind of wanted a simpler, out-of-the-box type experience that the original game brings you. So I'm trying to be going over some thoughts I had in regards to that, and maybe kind of foreshadowing maybe what kind of changes we could be seeing inside 2022 for the game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss some cards. Alright, and so the first change we're going to be talking about is Smithy. Now, poor Smithy has been receiving a lot of changes actually within the last month or so. And this one, in the past, I think 3-4 days, he's received quite the swap. No longer at 3 gold, he is now at 2. Same ability, but in the case of it's now an arrival effect. And the weapon itself has been changed to just increase a unit's level by 1 rather than 2. Now, this is sort of an overall big morph to Smithy. I'm not going to really call it a buff or a nerf, because you can see it in both ways. You can see it as a buff in the sense that you now have it earlier dropping Smithy to get the weapons into your hand, and it's an arrival effect, so now that synergizes with document forgery. But you could also see it as a nerf because you now have weapons at the level 1 boosting effect rather than the previous 2, meaning that the weapons are not going to be as effective in creating a bit of a more powerhouse unit. It just kind of increases the levels unit by 1, whoop-de-doo, move along, do your thing, etc., which is definitely a hit to a lot of level modification decks, which have been very dominant in the, community's meta game right now. You have things like the fish aggro, you have the things like Beast Burst. Those decks are always taking advantage of level modifications, things like Dwarven weapons. So to now have them at a level 1 boost, I think is fine. It doesn't really solve the issue with the decks in general, especially when we talk about some of the later changes down the line. But it's a step in the right direction, I think, in that you just want the level units to not be, I guess, undervalued, which I think is what the problem was. You were seeing, 1 gold for 2 levels, those 2 levels massively impactful. They can end up being the reason why a unit now swings for game instead of, less damage. So it's certainly nice to see the weapons is sort of just toned down and evened out here. And to see that Smithy is now just a rival document forgery synergy target is cool. This does take away his synergy from Tombstone deck. If you were using the Circle of Life or any sort of resurrection tools to resurrect Smithy, or using the Genesis to copy Smithy and bring him onto the field to generate the weapons, those are no longer going to work because the arrival effect kind of dictates that it has to happen from your hand, so hand to field, rather than it just appearing on the board and generating that ability here. So it's also a nerf to those druid strategies that Smithy was taking part in for the Tombstone decks. But now being document forgery deck could be a little scarier. Obviously, we understand how level modifications now work. We understand a bit more of their value in matchups, especially with this level modification meta going around. And so, will we see document forgery decks trying to take advantage of that to generate a lot of weapons boosts from multiple copies of Smithy. Not really sure if that's the case. We're going to have to see as time progresses here. But overall, I think it's a nice way to kind of tone down Smithy and bring him back to a, I guess, more fair level, I guess is a nice way to say it. But overall, I'm excited to see where he goes in the future. But with that being said, we do have to take a look at the next card. So let's go ahead and take a look at Blessed Are the Meek. Alright, next up is the aforementioned Meek. Blessed Are the Meek, to be more specific. And this is probably the change that has a lot of people terrified. We already mentioned, I guess, in a way that there are level modification decks going around. And Blessed Are the Meek was a big offender in that meta. It was sort of an enabler to a lot of the strategies going around. Most notably, the Manfish deck that we showed off here about a week or so ago. Those decks were primarily utilizing Meek's big level booster to create this monstrosity of a card. And usually they were things like the Assassins primarily. I think we saw Manfish, Dark Reaper got into the mix here and there, Trapdoor Ninja, and Magic Eater. A lot of Assassin stuff going around. And that might be the culmination of the crazy reworks that Assassins got to make them better, and paired with just the overall nutty give a unit 5 levels type of ability here. But the reason why this is going to be, I guess, more of a dangerous tool for those decks, obviously the level boost is lower. You'll see that it's no longer level, you're gaining 5 levels, you're only gaining 3, which is nice. But the more concerning thing is the reduced cost, as well as the new spell speed on that, no longer being an incantation. It is now a burst spell. And the reason why this is a problem was that, you know, because in the earlier matchups, you had this idea that Meek had more counterplay to it, in which if they played a Meek, you could do something to the unit. You can spell response, you can use an ability to potentially affect the opponent's unit target in some way to avoid the Meek getting the full value. You could do something to impact that play. With Meek no longer receiving that, with the player no longer getting the counterplay option, I should say, to the Meek, it's going to create a lot of instances where you're going to see turn 5 fish into Meek to create a level 6 fish, which can be, you know, taking less damage because, again, it's got that 50% armor in storms, so it doesn't really solve that fish aggro problem. And like you mentioned with the other card, you know, the reworked Smithy, you could potentially have a Smithy down earlier to generate a Dwarven Weapons for follow-up on the next turn, creating, again, a stronger fish. Not, I think, equal to the previous incarnation, but still, you know, a level, let me see here, level 7 fish, which can still be hitting pretty hard. Not as strong as the level 9 that I think we've seen, but still strong enough to warrant a little bit of concern there. So I don't really agree with this being the move for Meek. I think leaving it in incantation would have been more correct because, again, it allows a counterplay that other decks have to potentially counteract the fish aggro. But overall, being a lower booster than something, you know, than its previous incarnation, I think is a step in a great direction as well. So a little concerned about this one. Not sure if we're going to see fish aggro continue to maintain a strong presence in the metagame because of this, but we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about our next card. Alright, and our next card change should please a lot of players who hate the Steel archetype, in which Den of Thieves is now a flat 3 mana cost to play. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one because previously we had this at just 3 gold. It was a great sort of line that people could play. You know, they can get the Thief early, into a Cursed Vessel, into a Den, or on any other type of 2-drop, and you just get some Steel going on in the deck. It's that line, I think, is still very doable. However, well, I mean, not the Cursed Vessel line because Cursed Vessel costs mana, but I think the issue is that, you know, this is going to complicate the mana situation in a lot of these pirate decks. Granted, pirates don't really use a lot of mana, so I think this is still doable and playable for them. But it's going to be harder for you to synergize some mana cards in the deck as well. Things like Mercenary's Execution, I think, is going to be harder to fit in. Curse Vessel should still work, I think. It's just going to have to come out maybe earlier, forcing back the den, or later, if you want to get the den out earlier, based on any sort of steel synergies you might have. I don't think this is a complete kill to steel decks, however, a significant hit to them for sure, which is, in my opinion, fine. Steel in itself is a bit more of a, I guess, dirty archetype, in the sense that you're not really playing the game and building your own deck. You're kind of just taking whatever the opponent has and using it against them at a discounted cost, which is not fun for a lot of players to deal with. So that is sort of Steel's main plan. So to kind of delay that plan, or at least force a different insight into said plan, is appreciated, just to kind of see where it ends up. I'm very curious on that. Will I think Steel will die completely? No, I don't think so. But again, it's going to be harder for them, especially now with a den at just a fatter 3 mana cost to just flat out play. It's going to take a bit more time for the Steel deck to get going, which should give you, either the opposing player or the one who isn't running Steel, the opportunity to make effective plays and maybe even kill them before they can get their Steel engine online, and thereby winning the game. We'll have to see, though. Steel is a persistent archetype for sure, but this is probably the hugest nerf on the list currently, so I like to see that, especially being someone who's not a huge fan of Steel, but we'll leave that be for now. And with that being said, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at some Druid cards that have been changed. Alright, folks, the next card on the list is Fortify. A bit of a surprising nerf, this one, being taken down from 40% to 30% armor on the target that it's healing. Still drawing cards, still burst spells, still all that, but of course the armor being a bit reduced. Now, this is an interesting call. We know Fortify has been a card that, every Druid deck runs 3 copies of. It's protection, it's healing the castle, it's protection for said castle, it's draw, it's cycle. There's a lot of things that this card does for any sort of Druid deck, and to kind of see it take a hit like this was kind of to be expected, but still kind of sucks, because it's probably one of the, few good, like, oh, hey, I have this, I can survive another turn type of card, or, hey, I can negate your removal spell by playing the Fortify, and that was kind of fun to do, and to see it hit like this. I don't think Fortify is going away in Druid decks at all. It's still a decent include. I think the armor being reduced certainly hurts. It's going to cause a lot more interactions to maybe go in one direction as opposed to the other, but I mean, overall, I understand why it was done. It's just a card that is everywhere, and to kind of, force some diversity in the mix for Druid decks is good and needed, especially when we talk about the next card actually on this list that has received a change. That one's certainly going to be vying for contention with Fortify, but it's important to note that I think Fortify was doing one hell of a job in its spot, and to see it kind of be reduced now just a little bit is, I would say, fair. It is pretty fair. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at that aforementioned Druid card that has received quite a change. Alright, and our last card to talk about is the Shaman. Now, the Shaman was a card previously that wasn't really doing a hell of a lot. It was just a card that existed. It was sort of a really not good priest for the Druid archetype, which I guess was fine. It usually relied on the combat turn passing, and to understand that people were having trouble with. So it kind of was understandable why Shaman wasn't receiving play. However, now for that same sort of attack sacrifice ability, you give a unit 20% armor and heal it for 7 each combat turn. So not only is the heal increase to 7, you're also gaining 20% armor, which, from what we've learned from Fortify and other armor-based cards, armor is important. And to give a unit 20% armor from, just anything on the board currently, it's going to be a great way to have a constant Fortify on the board for Druid decks. And what I mean by that is that this Shaman can protect your units from potentially burn or other nasty spells, just by giving it that armor. I mean, it's not going to stop, like, instant removal, obviously. Things like the Soul Destroy or movement's not going to affect it too much, things of that nature. But it's important to note that some cards like Drain Life, Mercenary's Execution, Incinerate, Shaman can protect cards or units from that burn. I mean, may not be completely safe, depending on how much damage and how weak the unit already is, But the 20% armor should give sort of a, half of old Fortify type of armor boosting, which should be enough to protect it fairly well, I would say. And that's going to mean Shaman is now a pretty viable contention in the 2 gold slot here. I've seen people say that it is nearing an auto-include for them in some Druid decks, and to that I have to say, we'll wait and see. I'm not sure how, decks that are already running the Fortify will feel about that, if they want to cycle out the Fortify and try Shaman, if they want to kind of mix up the ratios on between the two, or with any other 2-drop they might have in the deck. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what direction Shaman will go, because this is quite an effective change to bring him back into the competitive scene, at least in my opinion. Again, the 20% armor being, a little just under what a Fortify does, it's going to be very good at protecting your units on board, protecting your troops from potential spell damage, which I think he can also heal himself too, which is not bad. We'll see how often that comes up in games. I'm not sure it's going to be coming up a lot because it is already a inherently weaker unit, but I digress. It's going to be interesting to see where Shaman goes, and I am here for it. Alright, and that wraps up the overall card changes for the latest set of patches, and there's bound to be more, I have to imagine, just based on what we've been seeing over the last few weeks. And that kind of really brings me on to at least this portion of the video in my overall discussion of, opinions on changes and where the game is going. Because it's no secret that, right now, CNC2 is doing not as well as the original, just based on a couple of factors. The game's depth, the game's platform, the fact that there's no mobile hurts the player base. There's a lot of factors that are kind of piling up as to, just why CNC2 isn't doing well. And obviously, that's not good for the team. The team wants the game to succeed, so I think there's a lot of effort being made to restructure the game down from its very core components, if you will. Now, obviously, I can't make word on what is coming. I am just one man. I am not part of the team. But I have to imagine that in order for the game to appeal to more, there's going to be a lot of restructuring to the core elements of the game. Now, again, what that entails, we have no idea. But we're going to try to just throw around some ideas, perhaps, on what I would maybe like to see changed, and maybe some directions that the game can go towards. I mean, right now, I would say the cards are great. I'm pretty sure that, aside from maybe the couple, ones that interact with mechanics, players overall have no issues with the cards. Obviously, as the games go on, things will be, oh, I want this patch, I want that patch, which, makes sense. They want to keep the game healthy, want to keep the meta diverse and changing, so obviously that is going to be addressed. But I mean, the core gameplay itself is something that I think a lot of people didn't really pick up on, or weren't really great at learning right away, which is understandable. There are some nuances to it that I believe for the casual players were going to be harder to pick up on from the start, but I mean, yeah, it is what it is. And to kind of see those potentially under the microscope for changes is interesting. And I mean, things like, maybe the phases maybe didn't do too well. I think initiative overall works. It actually is what makes the games fairly balanced, so I'd like to see that kept in if possible. But I mean, things like the summoning squares, the lanes, which, I mean, I don't think the lanes are going anywhere. Or at least changing, but maybe the summonings will change. At least that's what maybe could be good to create some, more back and forth gameplay. There's a couple of things that could just change up. I think it's important to address that. I think things like that should be, and hopefully are, coming down the pipe at the end of the day. Obviously, like I said, I can't make word on what exactly is going to change, but to understand that there are core factors that can potentially be swapped up, from what we've been hearing and seeing over the last few weeks, is very, very important, and can overall probably help move the game forward into a more favorable light as we approach the spring. Obviously, the mobile release is going to drop, and so if the game becomes more polished and becomes, tighter, cleaner, etc., then we can imagine that players are going to pick up on it. I mean, also too, I will mention that despite the multiplayer already being confirmed to be moving towards a more free-to-play aspect, the $20 price tag, I mean, what were you guys expecting with that? Obviously, I think that was, again, the one part or a part that did not go over well when you take a look at the Steam Marketplace. Tons of other games for a much lower price, and CNC2 slaps down a $20 mark. Now, from the perspective of the team and knowing what I know, I understand why the tag is there for such a price. But it's rough. It really is. And that was, again, maybe a big factor into why CNC2 didn't do as well. But I mean, hopefully that will change as well. But I think it's more important to at least get the gameplay down, secured, and tightened, which I think is what is currently happening now. And again, it'd be interesting to see where that goes. But I mean, for now, we can only just wait and see what exactly is going to happen. And in the meantime, just enjoy the changes as they come. Enjoy the game, hopefully, and get some more content out. I mean, I put up Inscription yesterday, which, by the way, go check it out if you haven't already. I think it's a great video. I think I'll make more of those. But I do want to go back to making more CNC2 content. I just want the motivation to do so. And right now, the game is in a weird limbo state where it doesn't feel like you can really get content right now. But I mean, like I said, I hope that will change. I hope things will swap up every now and then, or in the long run, actually, I should say, because it's important for the game's overall long-term health to stay alive. But those are just my thoughts, and maybe some things that I just wanted to address, maybe get some ears on it, that maybe, hey, you can change up this, change up that. And I mean, like I said before, if you have something that you want to leave in the comment section below as sort of like a, you have this opinion, they are looking for feedback. They are looking for that kind of stuff. So, when you keep it constructive, when you keep it formal, they'll favor your thoughts in that matter. So, I mean, if you want to leave one down in the comment section below, please leave it down below. It's great if you do that. So yeah, but overall, folks, I think that is going to do it for me for now. I think we're gonna end it off here. No, I don't think I need a fancy transition here. We'll just shoot from the hip here. If you guys did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like. Be sure to share the video with your friends. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, so that you can support us after all. And yes, very important to leave your comments down below, especially on things that you want to see changes to in the future of the game. Because again, I feel like we're just going through that phase right now. It's sort of the early access now, and if you kind of get your thoughts in wherever they may be, it's going to, be noticed and hopefully impact things for the better. So, yeah, I think that is going to be it for me for now. So, until next time, guys, stay gaming.